Hi, and welcome to Cool Jobs. I'm Caden Amoroso, your host of the show that aims to answer the question that every kid is asked at Thanksgiving by their relatives, which is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Not knowing the answer myself, I've decided to set out on an interviewing adventure where I would find individuals who have achieved the dream of working fun and rewarding careers and ask them how they found these jobs. What are some of the challenges these jobs present? And what keeps them motivated and driven to continue their work. All of this so that other kids and teens out there can learn with me and find the answer to the same question that I struggle with, which is, what do we want to be when we grow up?
So I am an equine-partnered life coach, and I am also an author and speaker and animal communicator.
So what does a life coach do? What is their role?
Yeah, so a traditional life coach is really helping people with solutions, with a plan to improve their life. Usually people come in with one major challenge, like a relationship or a job, and they're working on improving themselves and improving that area of their life. An equine partnered life coach really partners with horses to help people explore deeper levels of emotional intelligence, really about self-love and who we're being in the world. And we work with horses as really role models to assist in that sort of transformation into becoming better versions of ourselves.
How did you start out and become a coach, a life coach, an equine partnered life coach?
Yeah. So I was life coaching when I graduated from my master's in spiritual psychology at the University of Santa Monica. And I was life coaching basically with women who wanted empowerment workshops and private coaching as well. And then the horses kind of came in and took over my life. I've loved horses since I was a kid. I was an equestrian. I competed in college. And so it just became a very natural thing. I found my first mentor was working with those in addiction with rehab and recovery in California. And I sat in to volunteer, and I realized there was massive transformation happening in 2 hours that took 2 years in my master's program. And I said, I need to do more of this. And I really wanted to work more with high performing women who I had just come out of like a big career and as an executive in the movie industry. And I really wanted to help people start to slow down and work on their leadership skills and their mindfulness. And so that's what was my path. I was leasing a horse at the time, and I got really excited to essentially realize that horses could be co-coaches and partners with me in this journey of transformation.
What's the biggest aid that a horse brings to a coaching session?
Yeah, great question. They are essentially very present. So when someone's being very present with you, you are essentially given that energy. And that's what a lot of us seek. We seek to be present ourselves. We seek to have people or beings around us that are really present. So in that, people feel very seen. They feel very heard. Horses do not judge us. They don't care what we're saying, where we work, what we drive. There's no judgment. So people also feel very free. They feel like they can get into the depths of their heart and into the depths of their truth that we don't always feel with other humans, right? And I've had life coaches and I've had therapists and I've had healers, and it's wonderful to receive support from a human, but there's a lot of awe and wonder in receiving support from an animal, and especially a 1,200-pound prey animal that technically should be afraid of humans, and they're right there breathing with us and loving on us and connecting with us. So for a lot of people, it's like the first time they felt deeply loved if they didn't have a parent figure that did that for them. So
Yeah, it must be a really majestic experience just to be around those animals. Was
yeah.
there any special kind of training or you had to do to become an equestrian life coach?
Yeah, so essentially the training that really set me up for success was my master's in spiritual psychology. It allowed me to be a really strong life coach. And I felt like when I graduated, all I wanted to do was give those skills and those tools to others because they had changed me and helped me so much. So not set me up on the life coaching side. And then I had all of this horse experience since I had been an equestrian since I was 10, but I didn't realize kind of on the equine partnered life coaching side that this was actually a profession. There's equine therapy, which is psychotherapists who have mental health licensure, usually social workers or even PhD, and they have extensive training in mental health and mental health disorders and whatnot. Coaches are not as much focused on the past. They're very much focused on the future. And then the horses are very much focused on the present. So partnering them, we start in the present and then we cultivate the future that we want. So I got my certification in equine experiential education, and they are focused on personal growth and development, but even more so, I wanted to go there for professional development because they work a lot with corporate teams. They do team buildings and leadership retreats. So I wanted to learn the skills of how to really help corporate America, since that was my background. And I saw so many problems in that space that I feel like the horses could help with, and I certainly could help with. So that was where I got my training. I've since launched my own certification program, bringing in spiritual psychology, bringing in animal communication, and bringing in marketing, since that was really one of my big skill sets in the workforce. I was a marketer for many years, to really help people have a more robust business when they start this practice. Because a lot of us, when we start, we treat it as hobbies, and horses are expensive. And so I really wanted people to become successful so they could see more clients, create more change, and really take good care of their horses too.
Wow, that's awesome. So you're creating more equine coaches.
Coaches, exactly. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had people come through the program that are trainers. They are essentially going to start to incorporate, horse intelligence and horse wisdom into training. So really bridging horses and humans in their riding experience and in their partnership and their groundwork and their training. I've had a therapist. I've had a licensed psychotherapist who's come in and is bringing it to her clinic and essentially growing that there. And then I've had others who took the program and are like, actually, I really want to be an animal communicator, so I'm going to go in that direction. So it's there for people, because the skills, I think, are the most important. The curriculum modules are the most important. And then people take it and create their specific, unique path, career path, cool job from that training. So
What does it mean to be an animal communicator? Is that its own work set?
yeah, so I also, for anyone who might be interested in that, I'm happy to chat about that as well. Essentially, I did get training. I had 5 different teachers who trained me essentially in how to communicate with animals. And I think we all can. It's interspecies communication. We are often in communication with other, beings, whether they're, and like we're talking to, invisible forces, we're praying, we're in communication with different beings. So there's no difference really with animals. It's just that they are broadcasting on a certain channel and we can tap into that. So for me, it's really about connecting into through my heart and how much I love animals, and then getting my ego and my agenda out of the way and just listening, really being a deep listener, which, we learned at our master's program. And then sharing, asking questions and sharing with the human what their animal wants to share. So it's been fun to learn it. It's a skill I think I've always had, and I just had to develop it. And for me, it started with the horses, because I realized if I was going to coach with them, I needed to know what my colleague was saying to me, right? It would be like, can you imagine like Maura and Jason not talking to each other and trying to coach or trying to teach breath work? Like, you have to be able to talk to your coworker, your colleague, your partner. So for me, I find a lot of people do equine therapy or equine coaching without this skill. And so they're just reading body language, or they're interpreting what they think is happening, which is fine. But when you can actually hear the horse and what the horse is saying, like, hey, this client has blah, blah, blah going on, or this client needs such and such, it just adds a whole nother layer of depth and, like, to me, just truth and saliency to what is actually happening in a session.
That's that's so interesting to like be able to talk with animals. That's it's like a superpower.
It's fun. And I think it's going to be a growing career. Honestly, I think a lot of people, for me, I wanted to be a vet. Like the cool job that I wanted when I was a kid is I wanted to be a vet. I was pre-med in college and I failed biology, and I'm like, I got to figure something else out because I can't do this vet thing because I hate blood also. And I was like terrified, but I knew I wanted a career with animals. So I actually took out my college manual and I checked every single class that looked interesting in the entire manual, tallied it up, and realized that psychology was what I was most interested in. And so I took that. And then the second most interesting was anthropology and sociology and women's studies. So those were my minors. And then basically from there, realized that I could have a career with animals. It just looked very different than what I had known, because I didn't grow up knowing anyone that did coaching or therapy with horses at all. And I didn't even know it was possible. I also didn't know anyone who was communicating with animals. So I learned all of this as an adult. And it's funny because I had a book that even said like jobs you can have with animals, because I think my parents knew that that was my path and they gave me that book, but I still couldn't figure it out until I saw other people doing it. So that's why I love what you're doing with your show, because ultimately if people have a model or they have an example, then they can say, actually, let me learn more about that, right? Because I just had no idea what I wanted to do when I graduated college. And I was like, I just spent 4 years and all this money and all this time, and I still don't know what I want to do with my life. So I didn't really find my path until my master's, which wasn't, I graduated in 2009. And so thankfully I found my path like 8 years after college. And I loved entertainment. I loved doing marketing, and it fits into psychology, but it's not the highest like calling of my soul of why I'm really here, which is really more around personal and professional growth, right? And helping people be like who they truly are.
So as you kind of alluded to, this isn't like a very well known career. When you think of animal careers, I wasn't until recently, I didn't even know this was a possible option, which is one of the reasons that makes it so interesting. Would you say that like there are more people learning about these, especially equine therapy and coaching? Like, would you say it's expanding to the more mainstream?
I hope so. And I think so. I think that when I've known many of the mentors in the space, they've been doing it 20 years. So it's been around. It, in many ways, it started in like the therapeutic riding world. So people knew about it with like the disabled riding, some of the veteran work, the autism, and kids connecting through horses that way. So when a USM friend, actually, I was sitting with her one day, and I had another job. I had a conscious media channel that I was working on at the time. And she's like, I just see you coaching with horses. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't even know it existed. And I'm like riding on a trail and like yelling back life advice to the person that I'm taking on a trail ride. Like I couldn't figure out what she meant until I saw how it was working in the therapeutic environment with the addicts. And then I went, oh, I have to be able to apply this as a coach, not just as a therapist, because I knew I wasn't going to go do therapy licensure. So I said, this is really neat. And then I just started looking, and there was all these certification programs, and I was like, this is amazing. And so I started taking a lot of classes. I took a lot of horsemanship classes. That's how I also took animal communication classes. And I went to like every major trainer you could find in the horse space and I audited their clinics. So that way I could learn different exercises that I could do with the horses and different ways of connecting with horses. And then I really put all of that together eclectically to create my own kind of signature program and offering from there. So yeah, it was a journey. I do think it's expanding. I'm in a lot of different groups on social media where people are asking about training. They're starting to learn. I see a lot younger people before they go into college or during college that are like, I know I want to do this. What do you all recommend? Like, who do I learn from? What do I read? So there's more books coming out about it now. there's a lot of news on the veteran side. So people are starting to realize like this is actually out there. And I see a lot of women come to me because they have horses and they hire me to do animal communication. And then they say, I want to learn this. I need to learn how to do this. So they could do it with their own animals and they don't have to rely on me. So that then I end up creating training programs for people off of that, because there's a need for people who want to learn the skill, whether they do it professionally or not. They might, right? A lot of them are in their 50s or 40s, 50s and older. So it could be like a new career. In many ways, they're not interested in doing what they were anymore. And now they're like, actually, I love this whole, let me help animals. So they're looking into these fields.
What does a session look like?
Yeah, I love this question because a lot of people can't picture it. And so I love walking people through it. But essentially what we're doing is we're all on the ground. Often, if I have a herd, I will ask someone to come and pick a horse or a donkey I've worked with, and now I have goats. Pick an animal they're drawn to, go up and meet and greet that animal. And how you greet an animal is how you might greet life. So how we do one thing is how we might do anything. And that is how we, it's really about that mirroring and metaphor. Our stories come up really quickly when we're around animals and we're in nature and we're not in our comfort zone. So if you don't get a hello from a horse, is there a conversation around rejection? If so, is that story serving you? Do you need to hold on to it or not? And then we might do things like leading a horse, putting a halter on and lead rope on for the first time. So people are like, oh my God, a new skill. What do I do? How do you talk to yourself? Are you kind to yourself? Do you ask for help? Do you not? We will potentially groom horses, which is really fun to watch people. It's like, how focused and mindful are they? Do they just want to get the job done? Right? Do they have a relationship with pleasure? Like there's all these conversations that can happen even just from grooming a horse or leading a horse around and practicing leadership. I have specific exercises I do that are based on like goals or celebrations. I created an Awakening with Equines card deck, and in the booklet, there are 40 different qualities about the different exercises you can do with horses too. So I change it up based on what people's intentions are. I really like to kind of customize it and meet people where they're at, because I worked with anywhere from like a 4-year-old up to an 80-something-year-old. And I just think it's really fun, to meet people where they're at and see what they want from the time. Sometimes people just want silence. They want to meditate with the horses. So that's a really powerful experience too.
With such a wide age range, at least, what's the most common reason for people coming to equine therapy?
Yeah, it's really, I think, based on the person. The common for me is that people are wanting to grow communication skills, relationship skills, really relationship with themselves and others. They're wanting to step into more being present. They know that they need to become more present. They want to get out of overthinking and overanalyzing in the headspace and drop into their bodies and their hearts. It's a very somatic experience to be working with horses, because you're in with all the smells and the noises and the touch, and like all of the senses are really activated. So my favorite thing to help people with, even teens, is helping them to develop intuition, because if we have our intuition, we really have our highest superpower. So I always ask people to see if they can get a message from the horses, tuning in, listening, see if they can practice kind of like on the spot animal communication, because it will really help them because I can validate a lot of what they're sharing. And then that helps people have confidence in themselves as well. So to me, everything of the horses boils down to emotional intelligence skills. So trust, compassion, gentleness, clarity, kindness, like all of the things that the authentic self is naturally operating in, but our crazy egos get in the way of, and our heads overthink. And so people just really land in the moment. And from there, they have so much power, and they can really choose how they want to be in the world and also what they want to do.
Wow, it sounds like it gives so much.
Yeah, it does. And I don't work specifically with autism or disabled, and they come for different things, right? They come from motor skills, or they come from, they come for very different specific reasons, veterans as well. There's lots of different programs for different needs. But for me, usually my women who are anywhere from, 30 to 50 in that spot of like, they're going through a transition and they need support. They want a new career. They've just gone through a divorce, there's a loss. So they're really working on deeper self-love and self-care.
What is your favorite part about working in this field?
Now my favorite thing is really to watch them, because they're so incredibly of service and they do the most awe-inspiring things all the time. And we always say, like, you can't make this stuff up. Like, my friend was just sharing the other day that her donkey laid down in the corner of a barn, which he never does, to mirror something to a client that the client really needed to see. And it brought up a lot of emotion. And it's just this powerful situation that can happen sometimes where people really see stuff that they would never see otherwise. The horses expose our shadows, and they shine a light on what we need to do to be more congruent. And so I think for me, I just love watching them work because they're so fascinating and powerful. And I'm always like, how do they know that the client needs that in that moment in this way? Like, they'll come put their head on someone's heart. And, like, for me, they've done so much as well to just shift my energy, shift physical, emotional, mental pain. Like, I can go and have like a headache and be fine in 5 to 10 minutes. Like, what's actually happening, right? We don't even understand all the science of it yet. We understand some of it, but it's just watching them work is the most beautiful thing that I see here on earth. So
For someone who also is interested in going into that field and working with horses and really getting in touch, what would you recommend how they go about getting started?
yeah, this is what I get asked a lot. So definitely do your research. It's overwhelming at times. There are a lot of certification programs. You don't have to be certified to do this work. I started without certification, but I had a really strong mentor who had been certified, who was a USM grad. So I think it's important to learn from someone in a formal setting, right? There's certification, and each of the certifications are different based on who's leading them and based on what they're offering. Some are more about trauma and therapy. Some are more about coaching. Some are more about, teaching. And so it's really knowing what is the right fit for you based on what you think you want to do with horses. I always ask people to go back to like what they loved as a child, how that shapes what they want to do. And then also I love to ask people, like, what are your skill sets? What have you overcome? Because often we're coaching and helping people that is who we were 5 years ago, right? So like, I'm helping a lot of people who are CEOs or corporate executives because that's who I was. And I learned all the ways to be that helped me have more joy than what I was having in the corporate environment. So ultimately, I think people can start with Google and look and join Facebook groups like equine assisted Facebook groups. They can join the one I have, which is Awakening with Equines. I'm happy to always tell people about my program as well and kind of how we're different and who we're for, really. People can also reach out to me if they're curious. And I've tracked almost every one of the certification programs. So I usually can help people pick or guide them. So ultimately, I think it's important to get some training and education, and psychology undergrad is a great background to understanding things as well.
And one last question here before we end. How would you qualify a successful career?
So I used to have a very different version of success and definition. My definition of success was based on the people I saw at the top of the movie studios. And it was very much an ego-driven life. It was about status. It was about money. It was about if other people respected you. And, I was a VP at age 31. My goal was to do it at 33. And I was like, this is success, right? But then what happened was I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. And so I did my TEDx talk on the pursuit of perfection, because I've noticed there's a lot of people that they thought success was getting to the top, whatever the top was, the top of your field, right? and the CEO of the company, the vice president of the department, whatever it was, someone had claimed an outward definition of success. And then inwardly, I was not happy or fulfilled, and many others are not either. It's the biggest lie. I think it's like the lie of the American dream. And ultimately, what we have to do then is go within. And I realized, like, for me, success is doing what I love and doing it well, like doing it with high integrity, with congruency, doing it with high levels of emotional intelligence, right? And for me, it's really about something that's service-based. So it can be service-based in lots of ways. It can feed our families. It can be service-based, in a big scale and a small scale, but ultimately, like, we're happiest when we're helping others is really what I found to be true. So that's usually what gives people a lot of the fulfillment. And for me, I love being an entrepreneur. I love having freedom. I love having the schedule that I can have. So for me, success is having freedom, having joy, and having a lot of love in what I do, and a lot of what my horse calls healthy pride, like feeling proud of who we are and how we're serving the world, to step into that space, because then we shine brighter. And that is really what people are drawn to, and really why we're here.
Wow, that was a really well said.
Thank you.
Well,
Appreciate that.
thank you so much for coming on and joining me for this. I really appreciate it. And I learned so much more than what I knew about being a equine therapist and coach. It's really interesting career.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to talk to anyone that has specific questions about these fields, because they're hopefully going to get bigger and stronger. And I'm glad you're shining a light on it. So thank you.
Okay, well, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Okay, bye.